I think that supervision is essential for spiritual directors and for others in ministry as well. You know, it's easy for people to go through a training program where they're getting supervision, and then once they finish the training program to think, well, I really, you know, I probably should be in a supervision group or get an individual supervisor, but I'm not quite sure where to go. And I know for myself, I find that there's that should that's part of it. And what's more of a motivation for me is that I experience such support and such freedom in meeting with my spiritual director colleague group, where we take turns presenting the challenges we're facing, and we do peer supervision. And I go away from that affirmed in my gifts and calling to the ministry of spiritual direction, and also challenged and feeling confident that I'm serving my directees well. And if I didn't have that, I would miss a lot. You know, I wouldn't be as confident about, especially some of the directees that I think, ooh, I don't know if I'm serving them well.
How do we know the difference then between spiritual guidance or therapy and supervision? And that can be a hard thing to kind of understand the boundaries between supervision or spiritual direction or therapy. Because if I'm working on the self, and for me it took some time to really understand the differences. And it's about that we're bringing in areas that were blocked in our ministry or in our personal presence with those that we're helping. And it's from there, it comes out of our work or our profession and ministry, and then we might go into the kind of inner spaces of ourselves, but then it's about how could I be different in practice? So it's that reflection, action, reflection cycle.
Right, and always in the service of the ministry, as you say, or thinking about the directee. You know, how is this supervision session, if you're supervising me, going to help me serve my directees better? And so we would explore it to whatever degree is helpful there, and then maybe flag it. And if you're my supervisor, you might say, you know, you might want to bring this to spiritual direction, or you might want to bring this to therapy. And we wouldn't go into as much depth in the supervisory session as we would say in spiritual direction or in psychotherapy. So Geraldine, what image or metaphor do you like to use for supervision?
Well, the one that really has emerged for me when I think of supervision as a secure, safe holding space is the metaphor of garden. And I've been working with that creatively over the last few years. So if we think about the metaphor of gardening, it's about knowing the soil that we're working in and trying to cultivate the wisdom. I call it wisdom's garden. So it's about cultivating the wisdom, the inner voice, the inner knowing of the supervisee. And I, as a supervisor, I'm a facilitator of learning in that space. So I try not to enter it in the role of the teacher, if you like. I enter it in the role of a co-learner and a co-creator in that metaphor. And I've brought along this beautiful picture that I just picked up during the week here at the conference. And it's imaging the idea of that safe holding space. And it happens to be the hands of a 92-year-old woman. And it's called Bearing Testimony. And I think it's just a beautiful image of wisdom's garden. So I like to think of myself being in that soil of supervision, and also I'm being changed and learning and growing through the process.
And I love that image too. And I know we talk about contemplative, collaborative supervision as the way of working in wisdom's garden, and it's a way of being present with the person and with the spirit, and seeing what emerges in that space between us. And I think that that's so much like gardening, where you know, we can't control it. We don't say, okay, I do steps 1, 2, 3, and then this will happen. It's all about that collaborative, contemplative way of being with the seeds and then the plants and the the rain, and it's always being attentive and being aware, and I think that's a great metaphor. I use it too since I learned it from you. It's great.
I think a key area in gardening is also welcoming the weeds. And very often we think of a garden as a nice cultivated space, tidy and controlled. But for me, the metaphor works around the coming into supervision. We're bringing in our giftedness as well as our limitations and our woundedness. So if we like to use the metaphor of the weeds there, that way sometimes we have to learn to love and to live with the weeds. Whereas sometimes in our practice we're trying to get rid of those weeds or hide them or disguise them. And some of the work in supervision then is being supportive enough but also challenging enough to draw out those vulnerabilities, and I suppose really to work on the learning areas and the growth areas that we need to bring into the light in Wisdom's Garden.
Yes, and I know for me, some of my best supervision experiences have been when I have been able to be really vulnerable, when I have felt safe with either an individual supervisor or in a supervision group, and when I've been able to let my weeds as well as my beautiful flowers show, and when I can be vulnerable and have my strengths and limitations all be present, I learn a lot more, and that contemplative, compassionate kind of supervision helps me both see my gifts and feel affirmed, and see ways that I might be stuck or blocked, and a supervisor can nudge me toward more freedom in that compassionate space.
Something that I'm really exploring at the moment is the whole area of resilience, and how supervision can really help anybody in the helping profession to kind of develop resilience, that ability to bounce back and in the face of challenge or trauma, and also to hold on to that restorative aspect of supervision. Because we hear a lot at the moment around compassion fatigue or burnout. And I think that's a systemic issue. It's not an individual's issue, and that I think supervision has a big part to play in I suppose, the restorative aspect of our practice and resilience, and making sure that we are taking time for the self. And in doing that, it's not forgetting the client or the organisation, but in trying to self-care, then we are more present and more available and more helpful with our clients and holding them more safely.